Boom. Folks, I'm really sorry. I'm late, man, but I have a good reason. Excuses are like assholes. Everybody's got one. I got a new car. I got a new shiny platinum with black accent Tiguan sitting outside right now. I'm looking right at it. It looks freaking slick. I'm going to be the coolest dad picking up the kids today for sure. So that's the reason why I'm late. But I appreciate you guys tuning in. Whereas we were filling in, we got 22, 23 folks. Not quite there yet. Tuning in. As always, I appreciate you killers for joining me on this this journey we call the Hard to Kill podcast. We got a lot to talk about today, like lots to talk about today. I don't know if we'll have time to get it all in. I really don't, but let's give it a shot. So shout out to all you folks that are return listeners and all those that are here for the first time. If it's your first time, drop it in the comments. You know what to do. If you want something answered, put it in the comments. I love seeing what you guys have to say. And let's get right into it. I'm going to drop a banner here, and then we'll go from there. So I got a lot in terms of, I guess, commentary today, because there's just a lot going on. Veteran land is full of stuff, and it relates to you, the veteran, and also to anybody that's not a veteran. This is important to understand. You don't need to be a veteran to understand what's going on here. You don't need to be a member of the military to understand what's going on here. These are areas of concern for everybody. United States, Canada, UK, it doesn't matter. Hell, if you're tuning in from somewhere other than North America, let me know. I used to have a big Swedish following. Like, by big, I mean like a percentage point, so that on my pie chart, it would actually show up like, hey, Sweden's tuning in, which is really interesting. So I don't know if any Swedes are here, but hello, is that how you say hello in Swedish? I don't know. If you're Swedish or know Swedish, drop it in the comments. I'm a bit clueless as to the Swedes and how they roll. Okay, so what we're going over today, well, we're going to start with our moment of share and chill, and then we're going to discuss the lawsuit with the 330 CAF members that were suing the government for abuse of power during the COVID era mandates, and find out what's happening there. Also, we've got a CANSOF corporal, a former CANSOF corporal, who is getting his rights infringed upon by the very organization that used to employ him. So we're going to look at that. And then lastly, the title of this live is The Veteran Revolution. So we're going to look at the rise of the GWOT veteran and what that means for all of us. So let's get right to it. The moment of share and chill is going to really focus mostly on me today, guys. I'm going to shill a lot of my stuff because I am beyond excited to talk to you about my new book. Bada bing, bada boom. It's called Harden the Up. We don't want the YouTube censors to give this a strike. You can read. This book has been you want to call it a labor of love for the last 3 years or so. I've been working on it bit by bit. I gave up on it for a while. I even forgot it was on my hard drive, believe it or not. And thanks to Phil at Double Dagger Publishing, veteran-owned Canadian publisher, who reached out because I was reaching out to him to see if he wanted to join one of my fitness programs. He's like, actually, do you have a book on the go? He's like, I've been following you for a little while. I said, actually, I do, There's one on my hard drive. It's not done. I just kind of gave up on it. It was more of my mental health exercise for my mind during the pandemic than anything else. And I just forgot about it. But it's a combination, a culmination, a composite of all, and I shouldn't say all, of the best podcast episodes with the best guests that I could put into a book in 19 chapters for Harden to F Up. So that's the gist of the book. You're going to get a synthesis of the most actionable stuff that you can do. And there is so much more. I just had to really trim it down. So therefore, there'll likely be some more volumes in the future. But the book is going to be available next week. So on the 28th. So the 28th, you can join the pre-sale list here. You'll be on the email chain. Who does an email chain? Okay, boomer. So you're going to be on the email list. So you're going to get updates. There's going to be little goodies that come with it. And you're going to get some background as to, what the book is all about, where you can find more resources because you're a member of the pre-sale list. So you're going to want to check that out. I'm going to drop the link right here for y'all. So here we go. Dropping it right in the comment secciones for you. Done. You can go add yourself there and be first in line to get yourself a copy. So the ebook and the audiobook go on sale on also actively support their ongoing struggles, which often persist long after their military service has concluded. We must stand on guard for thee. And then if you guys got to work with Major General Thomas, I didn't, but I got to work with him on the back end once he was out of uniform, and I was a veteran as well with the Afghan crisis. Just a solid dude. And he lives here in Montreal too. So he thinks the book is great. And I quote, with firsthand experience from Afghanistan, Dave offers a powerful science-packed guide to becoming truly hard. I'm just going to end it right there. It stands for something. It's an acronym. If you're just listening to the audio, it's like, what is this book about? It stands for happy, aggressive, ready, and disciplined. It's my hard to kill protocol. He provides a roadmap for Canadian veterans to achieve lifelong resilience, breaking down essential habits like finding inner happiness, embracing controlled aggression, maintaining readiness, and mastering discipline in fitness, sleep, and nutrition. With expert insights and practical no-fail missions, this book equips veterans with the tools they need to thrive in both body and mind for the long term. Okay? So, guys, what's cool about this page too, I'm still building it. There's going to be a whole bunch of extra resources here, including workouts, exercises, and I did a whole bunch of graphic art that you get in the book. You're going to get a sneak peek as to some of it on this page too. I'm pretty proud of myself, I'll be honest. So you can go find all that at hardtokill.org/harden up book. And I got a video for you guys. You guys are the first that are going to get to witness this video because I haven't even posted it on YouTube yet. It's on zero platforms. So let's see if this works. I might cock this up, but I think I'll be all right. Here we go. Video file. Let me fill you in, folks. I've written a new book. It's called Harden the Up. Yes, that's the actual title of the book. The book is 19 chapters of the best actionable intel on how to get yourself fit, healthy, and moving in the right direction to make yourself harder to kill. If you want to get yourself a copy, you're going to have to join the pre-sale list. Like, I literally don't have a book in my hands. This is how early you are. I get it. You might be on the fence. Why should I buy another book written by a veteran? Well, I'll tell you why. You want to be cool, right? Well, you're going to want to be like all the cool kids that are saying some really cool things about this book, like Dallas Alexander. He's pretty cool. General Thompson, former Task Force Commander Kandahar, Tony Chapman, Dr. Elliot Justin. Who else? Oh, Tim Jensen of Grunt Style. Not only did he think the book was cool, he thought it was so cool, he wrote the freaking foreword to the book. Go get your copy as soon as it comes out. You're going to get an email, and you're going to get access to the hardened up book page right away so that you can start hardening up. If you want more information, you're going to want to join the pre-sale list. Do it right away. Join the list. Join the list. And you can be one of the very few that gets their hands on one of the best books of 2024. Ebook and audiobook drop on the 28th of November. On the 29th, you can get your paperback copy at Amazon. Link will be sent to you in your email. Be one of the first to get your hands on a copy of this amazing book and become harder to kill. Peace. Peace. There you go, folks. Little sizzle reel for y'all. There's going to be more to follow coming down the pipe. So go sign up. Link is here in the comments. So what else do we have to go over today? Well, I got a new podcast coming out with Catherine Christensen. We're going to be going over the unfortunate news of the 330 that were involved in the lawsuit for Op Valor. The federal government has punted that back to the grievance process of the CAF. It's really unfortunate. I'll be honest. So we had a discussion about it yesterday. So we're going to be posting that episode on YouTube tomorrow. So stay tuned. It's going to be at 19:30. It's going to be Eastern Standard for all of you that want to tune in as a premiere, and then be on my YouTube channel and Apple Music and all other places that you can listen to the podcast after that. I also want to talk about a really good article that I read. So this is from GWOT, who's a Canadian Armed Forces veteran. I don't know if he wants to share his real first name yet, so I'm just going to leave it at GWOT. So I know GWOT personally, and his Substack's actually really good. This article here, so this article on the degradation of masculine enterprise, is pure fire. It's so good. It just nails a lot of what a lot of us dudes are thinking, and have been thinking for a long time, and just haven't felt like it was appropriate to say it out loud. But I'll say it out loud. Guys need their own space, man. Like, we need our own space. And he makes a very compelling argument that without these spaces, we're in a bit of trouble. So I'll just read you just an excerpt here. The first thing I noticed sitting down to write about men's issues was some strange internal urge to say something like, women struggle with many issues, or although there's been much discussion and progress on equality, I think, but why? Why do we have to hedge what we say here? Why is there always some caveat when someone wants to talk about men's issues online or in public? Look up any book, research article, podcast, or interview about men's issues in the 21st century. Almost 100% of them will have a token line or paragraph saying that they acknowledge the struggles of women first. Oh, sorry. I read that wrong. But saying that they acknowledge the struggles women face. There's no need to apologize or add caveats. There's only two of us here, men and women. We're both in this together. And the reaction I had inside my body to try and smooth out the beginning of this article to avoid being labeled as too masculine is part symptom of what's happening in society that's causing trouble for men. Okay, so look at if you want to support a fellow veteran and support his Substack, I highly recommend you go just get the subscription. It's a few bucks every month. And you're going to be able to read articles by GWOT here. He's published some other ones that I'm definitely going to have to get him on the podcast. But it's just a fait accompli. Like, it's got to happen to chat about them, because he's writing some really insightful stuff. Super smart dude, and just wanted to share some veterans that are really here in Canada, anyways, that are doing some really good stuff in the you want to call it journalism, in the influencer space. And then lastly, if you haven't seen this book on Amazon yet, it's by Steve Macbeth. So we connected on LinkedIn just very briefly. So I'm very interested in having Steve on the show. So Steve, if you're paying attention, this is your formal invite. I know I haven't sent it to you yet, but no names, no pack drill, an oral history of Canadians at war in Afghanistan. This looks really good. This looks really, really good. It's already a #1 bestseller in Canadian military history. So go get your copy. Go support Canadian veterans that are in literature, right? Like there's plenty of books out there, but we need to support ourselves and do a better job at self-promotion. So here's some free advertising for No Names, No Pack Draw. I haven't read the book yet, but I don't care at this point. I will read the book, but I just want to give a shout out to Steve and anybody else that's writing a book. Please let me know. Send me the links. You know where to find me. Send me the links. I would love to promote them. I don't care what they're about. It could be about children's toys. I don't care. But if you're a veteran and you want to promote your book, I'm all in. I'm all in. I want to get our voices out there. Okay, so go check out that book, and I'll drop the link right here for you. It's going to be in the link in the description as well. Just FYI. So if you're wondering, hey, where do I get it? It'll be in the description once I'm done recording the live here, guys. Okay, so let's move on. And what else do we have to talk about today? Well, let's so many tabs. All right. So I wanted to talk about the court case that got dismissed. Okay, so if we open up the National Post today, or actually, was this today? No, this was yesterday, I believe. Oh no, a few days ago. So this is November 19th. Let me just pull not that. Let me just pull up. Guys, I'm having some technical difficulties here. I'm starting to spin. That's the problem. Here we go. Sergeant, what do I do next? I'm having a moment. Judge tosses vexatious Canadian Armed Forces vaccine mandate lawsuit over lack of material facts. Okay. So this is the state of where we're at in terms of the lawsuit that Valor Legal and Catherine Christensen brought against the Canadian Armed Forces for messing with 330 of our bravest and finest in the Canadian Armed Forces because they have a conscience and didn't want to bend the knee to tyranny. No big deal, right? But more than 300 plaintiffs, so 330 to be exact, who are seeking $1.3 million in damages each will now collectively pay the Canadian government $5,000 in court costs. Okay. So let's get into a little bit of this article and explain just a little bit about the conversation I had with Catherine moving forward, which will be dropping, like I said, tomorrow at 19:30 Eastern on YouTube. So a federal court judge has tossed a lawsuit filed by 330 current and former Canadian Armed Forces members, each seeking more than $1.3 million in damages for having their charter rights allegedly violated by a 2021 COVID-19 vaccine mandate. Now they'll collectively pay $5,000. Ruling in favor of the government's motion to strike the case, Associate Judge Catherine Coughlin repeatedly discounted the plaintiff's claims under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms because their pleadings were devoid of material facts or evidence to support the allegations and prove a reasonable cause of action. Now, the interesting thing here, and I want you to come up with your own conclusions, but after you listen to the conversation I had with Catherine tomorrow, it's very hard to kind of wrap your head around the fact that this was a mass tort. So essentially what this means is they're individually it's not pressing charges, bringing a lawsuit against the government, but every one of these has to be heard on its own merit. Okay. Does that make sense? So with that being said, the judges essentially said that every one of these 330 has not enough evidence and doesn't deserve to go forward, which is very hard to believe considering in the statement of claim, you get an excerpt of what the evidence is, but then there's evidence that goes with that mass tort and that statement of claim. And Catherine explains that quite well, that all of that, there's thousands of pages of evidence. It's very hard for her to believe that the judge read through all of it in 2 months, because that's how long it's taken. So the fact that it was ruled on so quickly on such a big case with so many people and so much evidence is very suspicious. And the judge here, Coughlin, said the pleadings presented in individual paragraphs that include details about each plaintiff, including vaccination status, are replete with vexatious language and bald assertions of bad faith. Okay, so we're going to get into what vexatious is and why it keeps on being brought up. It's a legal term that is used here in Canada often to out of hand dismiss things. And this is something that if you're paying attention, you're going to know is vexatious. If you're paying attention to what's going on with a lot of veterans claims, vexatious is being used. We're going to look at another example right after this one about vexatious claims. Okay, so start getting your reticular activating system attuned to this word because it's being weaponized against you, me, and everybody else that is a veteran in the event that we decide to take legal action. So get ready. All right, get ready. So to follow on with that, Valor Legal is mounting an appeal. This is the appeal. They've got a give, send, go. Obviously, this costs money. Obviously. And they are a nonprofit. So they're a legal action center for members of the Canadian Armed Forces and veterans. So they have decided that they're going to go ahead with the appeal. Like Catherine said on the episode, don't corner Canadian Armed Forces veterans. They get pretty aggressive and can fight a good battle when the backup is up against the wall. So that's the next step. Okay, we'll get more into it in the episode tomorrow, but I'll post the link here in the description. But that's the Give, Send, Go site if you want to go donate. And additionally, if you want another way to donate, I give $1 of every sale of the support the Canadian 329, which was made a few days before they added one extra dude. I think it was a dude to the claim. So it's still 329. I just haven't been able to do the graphic art to make it 330. But $1 from each one of these shirt sales goes to the Valor Legal Action Center. So you can support not only the podcast, but Valor Legal Action Center that way as well. So moving on, what else do we have to cover here? Well, the court case, or I should say, the denial of rights for a CANSOF Corporal Masood Abood. Basically, this is just popping up on the radar. There's been 2 articles written now about this exact issue, and it's starting to become a clear pattern that I'm starting to recognize that we need to all be aware of here when it comes to abuse of power. And I'm just having a hard time for some reason opening up this link, but I'll get there. There we go. Okay. So if you guys are kind of worried about what's going on here, what are your thoughts? Okay. Catherine's lawsuit is now just was essentially tossed back to the CAF grievance system, which is been proven at the federal level to be broken. There are individuals that have had grievances in for 18 years. The reason why it had to be taken out of the CAF to the federal court was because that system is broken. You cannot get damages. You cannot get any timely justice. And the individual that's in charge of the grievance process at the very, very top is the CDS. Well, the CDS is the jerk face that didn't send the order, made the policy for the mandates. And if your issues with the mandates, how do you grieve that? Obviously, he's not going to go against his own policy. And now the new CDS is not going to go against her predecessor's policy. So this makes no sense. This makes no sense. They have the exact same issue with the sexual misconduct stuff. The head of the sexual misconduct could have been your aggressor. So it has to be outside the chain. There has to be some means of obtaining justice. And the comments often made like, "Oh, you're military. It's a basic dictatorship. You shut up and just do your thing. And too bad, so sad." No, no, that is wrong, man. That's 100% wrong. You have every right, like every other Canadian citizen. You have access to the legal system. There is nothing that changes when you join the military. That's the military's fault and Canada's fault for not creating a different justice system for the military. That's not on the individuals. That's not on the individual to sort out. That's just the way it is. So you got to work with the system that you have. So there's a group of Canadians, those that are in the military, that do not have access to justice like every other Canadian. This is a major constitutional issue, and we'll get more into it in the episode on Friday. So this speaks to more of what we're talking about here. So we have a special forces soldier that is essentially getting targeted by CANSOF. and I believe it's CSOR. I'm not entirely sure. They say Kansoff, but I don't know. So special forces tracked former soldiers' social media, shared private info without consent. This is a big no-no. You can't do, like, if you do this as a private citizen, bad things happen, right? It's literally against the law. But if you're Kansoff, you can just do whatever the hell you want, right? Who's gonna stop you? I mean, we saw it with Dallas Alexander, right? The only thing that stops them is incompetence. Documents reveal that military collected a veteran's comments on misconduct, alleging they were part of an effort to intimidate troops. Okay, so that was the justification. So here we go. We have this handsome lad here. Um, so documents show Canadian Special Operations Forces Command claimed retired Corporal Daniel Aboud was trying to intimidate its elite troops by asking questions about alleged wrongdoing and making posts on various social media platforms. I don't think that holds much water. What do you guys think? A Kansoff soldier posting on social media is intimidating the, like, most savage war fighters on the planet. That doesn't make sense. It might make sense to somebody reading this in their, like, comfy lazy boy, but I can't see how that's any kind of justification. You're scaring the craziest warriors humanity has ever produced with some tweets, dude. Come on. So just reading on, Canadian Special Forces collected social media posts of a veteran, as well as shared his private information without permission as they tried to strip him of his right to ask for government information, according to Defense Department records. So we're talking about ATIPs here, access to information. Documents shared with Ottawa Citizen show Canadian Special Operations Command claimed retired Corporal Daniel Aboud was trying to intimidate its elite troops by asking questions about alleged wrongdoing and making posts on various social media platforms. So they have some of the posts here. He was he was commenting on, was it beer trooper, beer jumper? What did we call them? I can't remember. Anyways, that was hilarious. Like, that was awesome. He said one particular social media post gathered by the Special Forces team as evidence was a video of a Canadian soldier drinking a beer while parachuting over the Ottawa Valley. Aboud posted the image on social media platform X with the comment, "The only kind of troops I support." Yeah, it's just like shit posting, right? Like when you're pissed, like, yeah. The thing is, we have the right to post. When they say you cannot have a presence and you have to shut the fuck up because you're in the military, actually, that's not 100% true. Now, it can affect your career, like, but to say that it's like against the rules, you have a right to be able to actually say stuff. But we get into, but technically, if somebody decides that you don't, they can strike that right down, which is kind of the gray zone that we're in here in Canada. And we get into it on the episode tomorrow. So you're definitely going to want to stay tuned to that. So overall, this is just, again, just more evidence of the Canadian forces just overstepping the law, just doing whatever the hell it pleases and doing it with impunity, because what's going to happen to them? What's going to happen to them? Public opinion and I guess shaming in public is maybe the only avenue, because the law isn't going to do anything. The troops can't do anything. The institution isn't going to do anything. So we're just seeing a continual pattern. So now that there's the internet, maybe just shame the people that are responsible for doing bad stuff. But then you run into a nasty death loop, right? Because likely you may not get all the facts right. You may shame somebody that is completely innocent. So that's not the path we want to go down, like doing vendettas. That's like the worst case scenario. That's why you need to have swift, effective justice. It puts this to rest. Boom. Hey, misconduct. Boom. Toast. Or boom. You're removed from command. Boom. You're gone. All those things help with morale. Morale. Remember that thing that we used to have? Morale. So, if any of you guys know Corporal Aboud, please let me know. I'd love to be able to chat with said individual on the show. And if you'd like to see him, let me know. Let me know in the comments. It'd be pretty cool. And then let's round up the day. Let's round out the day with the main thrust of what I wanted to talk about today. So we're going to talk about three individuals in the United States that are making waves. Okay, so first up, we've got Tulsi Gabbard. Okay, so I'm just going to bring her up here. So Tulsi. If you guys have been paying attention on the podcast circuit, the podcast series, she's been really, prominent on Joe Rogan's podcast. She's been on a few times. She's an excellent conversationalist. She's got some really interesting ideas. She's principled, and she's a GWOT veteran. So we're going to be looking at 3 individuals that are GWOT veterans. So we're going to be looking at Tulsi, we're going to be looking at JD Vance, and we're going to be looking at Pete Hegseth. And the reason why I want to bring this up is because I think we're entering into a new era here. I call this the veteran revolution because these individuals all potentially have the chance to have really prominent positions in the Trump administration. GWOT veterans, Global War on Terror veterans. We're young. We fought wars that sucked and were pointless. And now we're coming back with a vengeance and we're reshaping the culture. The Americans are always at the forefront of the spear of culture change. And what we've been seeing over the last 20 years or so is a shift into something that we don't recognize. And I think most of you that are listening to this channel would agree. We're not on the right path. I think most Canadians agree we're not on the right path. But it takes individuals with courage to stand up and say, like, we're not on the right path. We're not going to follow this shit anymore. And we're going to do something different. So Tulsi is one of those individuals. And I respect her for a few reasons. One of the main reasons is that she has been able to be a vocal advocate for the quote unquote traditional left. So she was a Democrat for years in Hawaii and has made the leap to the Republican side, which is in any other time is very interesting, right? But in this time, I think I understand why. It's because I don't think she's changed very much. I think she's stayed more or less the same, but she shifted over to the right because the left is so far to the left now. Your face is smashed up against that wall. And if you can't relate to it, you're not going to spend any more time there. So let's get into a bit of Tulsi's background. She's a combat veteran. She was a U.S. Congresswoman from Hawaii and served in the army in Iraq during the height of the war. She was in the National Guard in 2003 and was deployed to Iraq as a medical operations specialist. She later served in Kuwait in a counterterrorism training mission, and she left as a major. In Congress, she's known for her independent streak, especially in foreign policy. She's been critical of regime change wars and advocated for a more restrained approach to U.S. military interventions. So you're going to see a common theme here. Most of the GWOT veterans, me included, are probably some of the biggest peace advocates that are out there. And I think a lot of you might have the same thought patterns that, especially if you deployed during the last 20 years. The idea of going to war in a foreign country and quote unquote nation build is farcical. We lost too many of our friends. Too many of us are injured and unhealthy. And we spent trillions of dollars all for nothing because the places are the same as when we got there in the first place in the early 2000s. Afghanistan, for instance, was a complete and utter fucking disaster. And the anger it brings up for most of us is visceral. To see all that hard work and effort go into the shitter is where I think a lot of us are starting to get activated, and we're not going to put up with it anymore. Tulsi has been activated way before this. So I'm excited to see what she does as potentially the National Director of Intelligence. I got a quick clip here for you guys just to play y'all. Oh, of course. Video's unavailable. Why? Why is this video unavailable? I already vetted.
This pan combines the.
Let's talk about everybody else and what matters here. The fact that we have all these troops in the region, this is an issue of sensitivity for you about where America is and why. Do you believe that this is something that will be rethought by the Trump administration?
Well, thank you, Chris. It's good to be with you on your show, and I appreciate you recognizing our veterans, my brothers and sisters in uniform, and the many challenges that our veterans in this country still face alongside their families. And to me, the most important commitment that veterans and servicemen and women should have from our leaders in this country, the best way to recognize that service and sacrifice and to say thank you is to make sure that our men and women in uniform are only sent into harm's way or only sent to war as a last resort after all measures of diplomacy have been exhausted. Now, this is one of the many reasons why I think so many Americans turned out to vote for President Trump, is because he understands this. And we've seen how through his last administration, he didn't just talk about ending wars. He actually went out and did that work of direct diplomacy. He went out and met with dictators and adversaries in that pursuit of peace for the American people. So in his next administration, and he was very vocal about this throughout this presidential campaign, that his goal is to end wars, not start them. His goal is to prevent World War III and nuclear war, and spoke many times about things that Kamala Harris never brought up during her campaign, about how he understands the seriousness of the stakes and the threats that we face as the American people, specifically because of the foreign policy decisions made under the current administration. And so I can tell you, as someone who still wears the uniform, I'm a lieutenant colonel in the Army Reserve, as someone who's deployed to multiple war zones in different parts of the world, the most important responsibility that any president has is to serve as commander-in-chief. And it's important on this day as Veterans Day, as well as you said, as every day, to recognize the best way to ensure our gratitude is shown to those who serve and their families is to make sure war is a last resort. And if it is required, that we take care of our men and women in uniform if and when they come home.
LTC, Gabbard, I thank you for your service, of course, and your.
So that's Tulsi in a nutshell. And I just learned something new, that she's still serving, which is pretty cool. I don't know. Can we do that here in Canada? Can you be a political figure and still be serving in, let's say, the reserves? Love to know what you guys think in the comments. And that's, like I said, the common vein here. We don't want to be fighting stupid wars, because we don't. And this is where being a dad comes in. I don't want to see my kids deploy like I did. If I need to go fight, it's for a damn good reason. And I don't want my kids going into the fight and losing their friends and maybe not coming home for a government that doesn't give two shits about their life and doesn't give two shits about them when they come home. That's why we're angry, and that's why we're taking action, and that's why this podcast exists. Okay, so that's Tulsi in a nutshell. Curious to know what your thoughts on Tulsi are, but we're going to move on, and now we're going to shift gears and look at our next dude on the list, and that's JD Vance. So give me a sec here. I'm just messing around, with my screens. Oh, this is where I feel like a boomer. I'll get it. So JD Vance. Here we go. JD Vance. Again, there's another common theme here, folks. They all have books. Like, they've all written books. And this book is really a big one in the culture, and especially in the American culture. And there's a Canadian link too. I'll get into that in a second. So Hillbilly Elegy, there's actually a Netflix movie on this. It came out a few years ago. A memoir of a family and culture in crisis. So JD Vance is a Marine Corps veteran, but he also comes from the Rust Belt. He comes from Ohio, a part of Ohio that was really hit hard with globalization. So like, when you think about the opioid crisis, and when you think about just poor and destitute white folks, this is the epicenter of that. So he didn't have a dad growing up, like all the things that could lead to a potentially like ruinous upbringing. He overcame that. So it's a pretty interesting backstory for JD, and I've got a few more details here to just back up what I'm saying here. So JD Vance, he's the Hillbilly Elegy author, and now he was a U.S. senator. Now he's the vice president elect, and he served in Iraq. He's actually a journalist. I didn't know this was a position, but you could be in the Marine Corps and be a journalist. So that's what he did when he was in Iraq. And it gave him discipline and focus needed to rise above the challenges in his tough Appalachian upbringing. JD then studied at Yale Law School, but his experience in the core stuck with him. When he entered politics, it was with a focus on addressing the struggles of working class Americans, particularly the Rust Belt. Vance has been a vocal supporter of the Trump administration's America First policy and now plays a key role in shaping the GOP's vision for the future. I think he's like the next iteration of like a GOP Republican / conservative, because he blends a lot of social justice stuff that, you know, the left talks about a lot. And he talks about making sure that companies have social responsibility, which is typically not what the right talks about. It's really interesting. And his link to Canada is actually with Jamil Javani. If you don't know who Jamil Javani is, let's see if I can do this on the fly here. Jamil Javani. If you know who I'm talking about, let me know in the comments. He is a newly elected MP, conservative MP in the Toronto area, JD Vance. Him and JD Vance are actually best friends. So that's interesting. Let's see if I can get an image here. Here we go. So that's JD and Jamil hanging out. They were outcasts together because JD came from nothing, from like dirt poor upbringing, and so did Jamil. And they hit it off at law school at Yale. And so Jamil's come back home and been a successful politician, getting an MP seat, and overcame cancer. And so there's clearly going to be a connection here, because I mean, I can't see how a conservative government doesn't get elected next time around. And so you're going to have two folks that really know each other really well. And obviously they're going to have their national best interests at heart, but they're also able to have a conversation across the border too. So that being said, back to JD, I was saying that his military background gives him a credibility when discussing national security and veterans issues, and he's becoming a rising star, essentially. So with the vice presidency. So I like what he has to say, because he's just very level-headed, right? He's a great counterbalance to Trump just riffing. JD's very level-headed. So they are making good.
4.0 claims to be the most advanced waterproof tactical hoodie.
So do you have to ask Trump places you can go
With
to
JD,
promote or to campaign? What is that relation? How does that work?
Yeah, no, it's actually mostly driven at like the staff level, right? And
so a strategy, kind of.
Yeah, it's like strategy. So okay, there are 7 big battleground states. It's the 3 in the Midwest are Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and then Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, and North Carolina. And so it's like you look at a little bit, it's driven by polling, a little bit it's driven on just like, where do you think this guy's going to do the best? And I've spent a ton of my time, like I think I did like 5 or 6 events just in Pennsylvania the past week and a half.
Wow.
So I've spent a lot of time in Pennsylvania, a lot of time in Michigan, a lot of time in Wisconsin. I'm actually trying to get Kid Rock to go with me to Michigan in a couple of days.
Yeah,
because he's a Michigan guy.
Oh, he'll go.
Yeah, he probably will.
Yeah, he'll go, dude. Yeah.
But anyway, to answer your question, it's basically you go where the campaign needs you to go.
Right.
And like, yeah, I could say no, but I'm like running for vice president, so I try to do as much as I can just to be helpful.
And do you
I'll just make it. Oh, wait, let's go back. Let's go forward a little bit. Get some JD in there. I'm just going to say, JD, bro, I can help you. I can help you with a little muffin top going on here. Get rid of this dad bod. We got to tighten you up. We got to get you back to Marine Corps fitness levels, buddy. Let's get those sit-ups in. Anyways, I digress.
It's more divide and conquer, right? So it's like you got 2 people and you can be in 2 places, so you might as well do it. But if we got like a really big event, like, you know, the president got shot in Bucks County, or sorry.
Which time are you talking about?
The first time.
Okay.
The first time.
Because they really
he got shot in Pennsylvania. And so we went out to Pennsylvania together to do a big rally, and then Elon Musk was there. In Butler, PA, yes, in Butler, Pennsylvania. And then, you know, like I was in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, like a week earlier, but that was just me.
Right.
So you sort of go, you know, some places you go together, but most of the time we're sort of dividing and conquering.
How, with the attempts that they've had on Trump's life and safety, how much of a concern has that been for you? Like, it's like, because if I'm standing next to a guy and they're shooting at him, I'm next to him.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, I try not to think about it, man. Because
really?
Yeah, it's one of these things.
So Theo Vaughn is probably one of my favorite podcasters. I can't believe he's become like so legit. He gets like the president on his show and the vice president. Podcasting's a wild ride, man. I'm not gonna lie. I'm happy to be here on the podcast airwaves because it's the new. So you had, you know, the I guess the town crier, then you had newspapers, then you had radio, then you have TV, and I guess the next iteration of that is podcasts, right? Clearly they're like a kingmaker now. It's so insane. It's so insane. Just picking up a mic and hitting record. So Theo Vaughn being a really he's freaking hilarious, man. His stand-up is insane. So to have all these folks on and he's actually taking a more serious tone. It's pretty cool to see. And then lastly, Pete Hegseth. So I only really learned about Pete Hegseth a few weeks ago on the Sean Ryan show. He was on his show. And I'll pull this all up here. So Hegseth has been tapped to be the Secretary of Defense. It's a big deal. It's a really big deal. I'll pull up his book here again. Everybody has a book. Like this is the SOP here. If you want to make it, oops. If you want to end up, you know, having a platform, having a political platform, clearly having a book is part of the SOP, is part of the way forward. And he has a few, right? He doesn't have just one. He has Battle for the American Mind. I think he has a third book as well. So he's also a journalist on Fox and Friends as well. I don't, is it Fox and Friends? I'll get into the actual title he had, but the conversation he had with Sean Ryan was really interesting. I have a clip from it as well that we'll go over. But his book, The War on Warriors, Behind the Betrayal of the Men Who Keep Us Free, is, again, saying out loud what a lot of people have been scared to say for a while. And also echoes what GWOT was saying about kind of having a caveat when you're talking about men's issues, right? Like, I don't quite know if I can say this without saying, well, but women too. He's very upfront and on the nose. And this is what I've believed for a long time. We're doing a disservice to women in the military. We're putting them in positions that they are not ready for, and they're getting injured, and it's not right. And they're getting put in situations that they should not be in. His argument is very similar to mine. There are some positions that just shouldn't be open to women. And the only way that this would actually be doable is if the standard remained the same for men and women. But what we've done is we've created, and this goes back 20, 30, almost 40 years. We started reducing the standards and having 2-tier of standards for men and women to get into things like the infantry, for army jobs here in Canada. Like it didn't make sense that you could have somebody do the exact same job but have a different standard to achieve. It's like having a different standard at school, right? It's like, well, you get an A if you get 90% if you're a boy, but if you're a girl, an A is 80%. Nobody would stand for that because you'd be like, well, that's sexist. Well, it's sexist if you make the standard lower for women for a job that is physically demanding, because it's saying if you can't get this standard, you're going to get hurt. But no, these do-gooders, these individuals that thought they were doing good, virtue signalers, thought it'd be great because they're not the ones that are joining. They're not the ones that are putting their ass in the line. They're the ones going, oh, yeah, well, women should be in the infantry. Women should be artillerymen. It's a brutal job. A lot of guys get washed out. So Pete has basically made a really good point that this culture needs to go. And he talked about wokeism, which I essentially just equate to modern Marxism. It's a way to undermine everything that builds your nation. And this has been going on for a long time. It's just the packaging is different. And since we don't teach civics anymore in school or history, it's very easy to dupe people. It's very easy to pull the wool over people's eyes and to make them believe in things that are contrary to their own best interests. For example, looking at veterans as if they are somehow terrorists, that they are somehow a threat to your democracy, to your way of life. Even though we're the ones that said, hey, I'll go and fight these wars. I'll go. Some even had their kids go. They believed in it so much. To come home and think that somehow we're going to be the enemy is farcical. But the reason is because the culture has shifted so far over. And I'll read just an excerpt from his book. He joined the army to fight extremists. Then that same army called him one. The military Pete joined 20 years ago was fiercely focused on lethality, competency, and colorblindness. Today, our brass are following the rest of the country off a cliff of cultural chaos and weakness. This is from an American. I think you can hear the echoes here in Canada as well. I would say we're way past off the cliff. We're off the cliff. We're like in the valley. We're down over the waterfall. We're descending into hell. This is essentially where we are. They're just leaving off the cliff here in the States. And so what his background entails, he's a decorated Army officer, and he's a Fox News host. He's, like I said, Army veteran, multiple tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's part of the National Guard as well. He earned two Bronze Stars and continues to be a strong advocate for veterans. He transferred from active service to becoming a media personality and political commentator. He's been a staunch supporter of Trump and has used his platform to promote policies aimed at strengthening the military and reforming departments of Veterans Affairs. Under the Trump administration, Pete serves as an informal advisor, but as we know, that's been updated to his nomination now is for Secretary of Defense. So when I first heard about him and on the Sean Ryan show, and I'll show you a clip, he was, talking about Veterans Affairs needs to go out to the veteran. It needs to actually go where they are, not the other way around, and incorporate some privatization. And I like what he was saying because they have the luxury of having a VA that actually has a system of care that's built around them. So they have the doctors, they have the facilities that are for military members, so they know who their clients are. We don't even have that here. So it's very hard to even compare apples to apples on that front. But let me just show a quick clip here from the Sean Ryan show.
This is a razor that you buy once. It's a razor that you own forever. And it's a razor that no matter how...
Why have we spent the last 20 years fighting enemies that don't abide by rules at all, when we live now in a world in 2024 where all of our enemies use all of their advantages against us, ignoring all the rules of war, and then expecting us to play by all those very same rules?
Amen, brother.
We're just critiquers in the middle of the process, and then we wonder why the war never ends, and why it perpetuates itself, and then why we're throwing our own guys in jail. Because we've written rules that are impossible, that are written for us to lose.
All new at 5:30, a Pentagon ban on women in combat is over, opening up new opportunities for the next generation of female soldiers. Defense Secretary Leon Panetta says removing outdated barriers to women will make our military stronger, and the president agrees.
You don't like women in combat?
No.
Why not?
Because everything about men and women serving together makes the situation more complicated, and complication in combat means.
Let's open that up in the comments. What do you think? Okay, be honest. Okay, if we're not honest, we're just lying. Okay, I don't think women should be in combat units. That's my opinion. Being honest doesn't mean I don't like women. Okay, it doesn't mean I'm a misogynist. I just don't think, unless there's a very strong caveat here, unless they have the exact same standards to get in as the men. But I would also argue that they have very different strengths that can be utilized in a lot better roles, that the Army is blindly just saying, yeah, let's just waste this talented individual by meeting quotas in a line infantry unit when they could be deployed in other capacities. That's my main argument, is that we're just wasting really good talent because we want to see people in the Rangers, we want to see people in the infantry battalions, and we want to have women faces there. That's my argument. Curious to know what yours is.
Casualties are worse. Take the assassination attempt of President Trump. In a perfect world, would you want to have like 6'3" guys guarding a 6'3" president?
Well, I'll tell you what, it sure as hell doesn't make sense to have a 5'5" woman in there guarding a 6'2" man, because part of personal security is you should be able to shield your principal.
Kind of makes sense, right?
I wrote a book about education. I've written some books about politics, and it just didn't feel like the right time to kind of assess where we were in the military, especially after 20 years of more or less ongoing combat. But then things, under Obama, but really after Trump and then in Biden, you start to look around and you say, wow. And it happened really fast. The deeper question is, how did the military allow itself to go wrong?
Service members in the U.S. military branches are warning that diversity, equity, and inclusion policies are weakening the institutions while recruitment is falling short and morale is dropping.
No one wants to work, let alone serve. Last year, the Army alone came up short. They wanted 60,000. They were short by 15,000. Are woke recruiting commercials like this to blame?
And the American people see advertisements in June with rainbow bullets strapped to helmets. When they see surgeries for transgender being funded by taxpayers, they see the Department of Defense being turned into a social engineering experiment.
We saw it under Clinton with the tinkering of Don't Ask, Don't Tell and the reasons for those changes. And I talked to some of the people involved in when that was changed, but it really started to accelerate under Obama. Would I recommend my kids join the Army today or the military today? It used to be, of course I would. And over the last couple of years, it became clear, like, would I?
There's a lot of great points there. And so here's the thing too. There's a lot of controversy around him, and you may not have heard of it, but he goes into it in the show. The labeling of individuals as right-wing extremists is rampant, right? The folks that would use labeling to defeat somebody before they hear their ideas is a Marxist tactic. It's something that's been used forever, right? If you want to silence somebody and make sure that somebody that hasn't heard of this individual never listens to that individual, you label them something that would make them repulsive. So Pete's been labeled a white nationalist, essentially a neo-Nazi. And you'd think, well, that's weird. Like, why would he be named as a Secretary of Defense? Why would he be in the National Guard? It's because he's a very devout Christian. He's got Christian tattoos, one of them being the Jerusalem cross. Jerusalem cross has been used in history for 2,000 years. It's been around for a while. And yes, the cross sometimes is used by people that are neo-Nazis. But that doesn't imply that because you're a Christian and you use a cross that you are one too. So it's a very ugly way to cast shade on somebody for the mere fact that they're proud of their Christianity. So the rumors around him that he's a neo-Nazi are so far-fetched. I mean, we see right wing being tossed around a lot, like, oh, that's right wing. And that the implication is that don't listen to that individual. They have far right ideology. Really? So you're basically implying that somebody like myself who questions the government, who doesn't like the fact that we're being bullied, somehow is far right. That makes me what you in the individual's mind somehow unlistenable, toxic, a Nazi. That's what they're trying to imply, and that's what they're trying to do. But we've had enough. I can't think of a better organization that rooted out extremism than the military. I mean, I remember I showed up, I bicked my head. It was like down to number 1. I didn't bick it. It was down to number 1. And I got torn a new one when I first joined. They're like, we don't have skinhead haircuts like that. You get a high and tight, but I don't want to say, let that grow out a little bit and then you fade it. And it's like, well, why? It's like, because we're not neo-Nazis. It's like, oh, okay. Now I kind of get it. So the idea that somehow the Canadian Armed Forces, that the military is a breeding ground for white nationalism is laughable. I mean, the amount of folks that you hang out with in the military that are from literally every culture on the planet, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make, you don't join because you're a white nationalist. Nobody does. So I've literally never bumped into one. Not that like guys walk around like doing Hail Hitlers, but you know, it's just it's unfortunate that that's what our culture has come down to. And so he's going to be a wrecking ball, in my opinion. And I'm curious to know what your thoughts are. All these individuals are going to have a massive impact if they get the positions that they're nominated for. They have to pass through Congress and the Senate, I believe. And I'm curious, does this have an impact here in Canada? Is this going to change the political landscape? who is actually involved politically. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is Jody Minnick. He was a counselor in Ottawa. He was high profile, no longer in politics. Maybe one day he'll get back in. Who knows? Kevin Vuong, he was embroiled in a whole bunch of scandal, but he's a Navy officer, I believe. You know, there's Aaron O'Toole. There's a few that are speckled. Harjit Sajjan, who's a corrupt piece of whatever, who's in politics. Andrew Leslie was in politics, but he had to leave because it was too corrupt. So we have individuals that are making plays. Looks like Rick Hillier might be doing it as well. But the GWOT veteran, like the captains, the majors, the corporals, the sergeants, you know, JD Vance was an NCO. That means something, you know. Then he went to Yale and became a lawyer. Like we have a lot of those here in Canada, but we're not pushing like the Americans are to get into the positions of power. And I think we need to. I think we need to listen and take notes as to how these Americans to the South are doing it, because we can sit here and complain. We can talk about wokeism. We can talk about how shit the military was, how much abuse they levy onto their troops, like how dysfunctional it is. But the only way that changes is if there's either a complete teardown, revolution, and pitchforks and torches, or you get involved in the political system to enact change. And imagine if all your bros and sisters get involved and start moving that ball in the right direction. I think that's one option. I think it's possible. I'm an eternal optimist, but I'd like to know what your comments are on that. Do we even have a shot? But it'd be good to see more GWOT veterans just getting into the mix. Get into business. Start writing books. Do more. You can. People will listen. Guaranteed. I didn't think anybody would listen to this show. But it turns out, hey, we got 163 on a live. There'll be thousands of people this month that tune in. Okay, that's insane. It just takes a little bit of effort. It takes a little bit of courage, because you got to get in the arena. You got to say what's actually on your mind. Don't be Canadian on this. Talk about the things that bother you. It's okay. You're not a racist. Okay? It's okay. You're not a misogynist. It's okay to be a dude. It's okay to say things. Don't be scared. Okay? Don't let the Twitterverse and the pussies that reside in your neighborhood or in your workplace scare you. You're a warrior. Act like one. All right? So that's my pep talk for the day, guys. Stepping down from my soapbox, about to get in my new fancy car, go for a little drive, go pick up the kiddos. We have surprisingly, not a lot of comments today. Is it just that they're not populating? Because I got two here. Cynthia agrees, and she loves Tulsi. Thanks, Cynthia. And then, okay, Duke Nuka. Okay, good question here. When recruitment is as limited as it is, wouldn't it be hard to specify men only for combat roles? I got a good counterpoint to that. The Marine Corps, they've never reduced their standards. The Army, the Navy, Air Force in the U.S. have all reduced their standards over the last 20, 30 years. And they've seen, like we just saw, declining numbers. You know who doesn't miss their quotas? The Marines. You know why? Because if you keep your standard high, the hard chargers will find that and be like, I want to be part of these people, not these losers over here. And that's what individuals that believe in this woke, multicultural, inclusive agenda believe. They believe that lowering the standard so everybody can join is a good thing, but it is a awful thing for an institution. It is a race to the bottom. I saw it as a teacher. We would always work with the kids that are having the most amount of trouble instead of working with the kids that had the most amount of potential. The majority of the resources went to the kids that were struggling, when in my opinion, they should be going to the kids that are knocking it out of the fucking park. And until we change that mentality and it starts in a school system, we're going to have a hard time. But if you up your standards, and I would love to see this experiment here in Canada. Hey, to get into the infantry, the standards they're getting jacked up. You want to join PPCLI? You want to join the RCR? Cool. But you're going to need to be able to bench press. You're going to be able to deadlift. You're going to be able to run. And you're going to be able to basically be a savage on day one. And we're not going to compromise. If you can't make the cut, you don't make the cut. And you do videos like Pete Hegseth says, that are edited and run by the guy that like does like Top Gun, you would have a lineup of young dudes ready to join. Guaranteed. I guarantee you. Some of the recruiting stuff here in Canada is pretty cool. Like I like the videos, but you got to get rid of the, hey, we want to all have a happy family and it's a great job. No, it's not a job. It's dirty. You're jumping out of helicopters. You're doing cool shit, but you might die and you got to punch people in the face. That's the job. The Army's job is to kill and close with and destroy the enemy. And until you bridge that gap and accept that that's what the military does, you don't need to worry. People will join. You don't need to lower your standards and say like, well, we don't have enough people, so let's lower our standards. So like women that wouldn't typically make it can get in. And the same thing goes for guys. If you're just not physically strong enough, you can't join. All of the combat jobs in the military are strength-based. They're all strength-based. If you're an artilleryman, you got to lift those, 70-pound shells? I wasn't in the Army. They're heavy. The machine guns in the infantry, like the C6 is heavy. The 50 cal, fucking crazy heavy. Jerry cans, everything, super heavy. It'll bust. Like I got busted up. I'm a big dude. I'm 6'4". So like, what are we trying to do? Are we just trying to be a social experiment? Or are we actually trying to have a fighting force that people are scared of? Because that is what the Army and the infantry is supposed to do. You're supposed to be savages that people are fucking scared of. That's it. That's your job. Go kill people when we say so. That's it. So to answer your question, that's a little bit long-winded, but if recruitment is limited, up your standards. Up your standards. Make it harder to get in. And stick to it. Guaranteed they'll have more people in. Guaranteed. Like, I mean, even Cansoft lowered their standards recently. I'm training a guy to get over to the Cansoft. And they're like, yeah, standards went down. I'm like, what? What do you mean standards went? Like, they removed some of the PT requirements. I'm like, oh, come on, man. Really? It's like, yeah, this is what it is. Not cool. So, Duke, okay, cool. You agree? Awesome. I guess that's it for me, guys. 168. Wow, more people are tuning in, man. Unfortunately, I got to bounce. I got to pick up the kids. But let's recap here, guys. Let's recap. Before I take off, my book is going to be out on the. Whoops. There we go. Is going to be out on the 28th. You can get the ebook and the audiobook on the 28th on Amazon. You can get the soft cover on the 29th. So Black Friday, go check it out. You're going to enjoy it. If you enjoy this is the book is right up your alley. This is what I'm talking about in the book. I'm talking about fitness, health, talking about mindset, how to dial your shit in, how to make sure that you're a better veteran, a better human being. This is where it's at. And you're also going to get a training plan in here too. So the book is going to be available to you next week. Join the pre-sale list. Okay. You'll get the heads up before everybody else. Hey, go get your book. And if you do get the book, this is important. You got to leave a review. You got to leave a rating, because when you do, that helps me sell more copies, get more veterans dialed in, and get closer to helping 100,000 veterans lose 2 million pounds. And then I want you guys to also go check out GWOT here and his Substack. Really awesome stuff. Like, honestly, but yeah, he's such a good writer. And he's got a bunch of articles that you're going to find really intriguing. And he's a Canadian Armed Forces veteran. So definitely go check that out. And stay tuned tomorrow at 19:30 Eastern Standard. There's going to be a premiere episode where I chat with Catherine Christensen, the lawyer from Valor Legal that is representing the 330 troops that brought an abuse of power lawsuit against the Canadian Armed Forces. That has now been punted back to the Canadian Armed Forces to go to their grievance system, which is clearly just a disaster and a miscarriage of justice, in my opinion. So you're going to want to stay tuned to that episode. It's going to be a banger, and always appreciate the support. So make sure to share these episodes, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one. And stay tuned. Next week is Anti-Corruption Week, or Corruption Week, whatever you want to call it in the CAF. We got a bunch of episodes all lined up with some really incredible guests talking about what we're talking about here, corruption, and how it affects you as a member of the Canadian Armed Forces and as a veteran and as a Canadian, because you should know what's going on in your military. That's it for me. Train hard, fight easy. See you on the next one. Peace.